Iswatin Amanina binti Ahmad Fauzi. I will present about audit, which is good assignment with my friends Hanani, Khairani and Nur Amira, and our case is HealthSouth. Okay, first I will tell you about introduction of accounting fraud. Accounting fraud does tend to return in wave and is discovered most frequently after a market collapse. Since nobody is curious about investigating much, when stock price are high and everyone is making big money. The purpose of accounting is provide control and information. Audit financial statement provide assurance that the financial and other information is accurate and fully disclosed. However, key providers of the information could also be unwilling to present accurate and complete disclosure. Okay, next, accounting fraud is that the intentional manipulation of monetary statements to make a false appearance of corporate finance health. It involves an employee, accountant, or the organization itself. For accounting fraud to require a place, a firm must deliberately falsify financial records. Okay, consider a firm that creates an estimate that has got to be revised later. No accounting fraud has taken place because the errors were not deliberate. Okay, then a company can commit accounting fraud if it overstate its revenue. Okay, example, suppose company ABC is really operating at a loss and not generating enough revenue. Okay, to hide up this example, the firm might claim to be producing more income on financial statements. So on its statement, the company profit will be inflated. And if the corporate overstate its revenue, it might approach the firm's share price and make a false image of monetary health. Okay, so this sort of accounting fraud creates a misunderstanding of what proportion net a corporation is receiving. Actually, it's going to be a losing money. Okay, next I will talk about cook the book. Cook the books may be a slang term for using accounting tricks to form a company's financial result to look better than they really are. Typically, cooking the books involve manipulating financial data to inflate company's revenue and deflate its expenses. Some companies to record all of their expenses that incurred during a period until subsequent period. Many companies who sell their products extend terms to their customers, which allow them to pay the corporate at a later date. These sales are recorded accounts receivables since they represent product that been sold and shipped, but the purchase have yet to pay. The next example of the cookbook. First, credit sales and inflated revenue. Customer can use credit sales to exaggerate their revenue. That's because the purchase customers make on credit are often booked as sales. Albeit the corporate allows the customer to postpone their payments for 6 months. Second, channel stuffing. Manufacturers engage in channel stuffing, ship and order products to their distributors at the top of the quarter. These transactions are recorded as sales, albeit the corporate fully expects the distributors to send the products back. The right procedure is for manufacturers to book products sent to distributors as inventory until the distributor record their sale. Third is mischaracterized expenses. Many companies have non-recurring expenses, which is one-time costs that are considered extraordinary events and unlikely to happen again. Companies can legitimately classify those expenses intrinsically on their financial statements. Lastly, stock buybacks. Stock buybacks are often a logical move for companies with excess cash, especially if their stock is trading at a low valuation. Okay, a buyback is when a corporation uses its cash to get some of the company's outstanding equity shares. Buybacks reduce the general share count and typically cause a better stock price. Okay, some companies repurchase stock for a special reason, which is to discuss a decline in earnings per share, and that they often borrow money to try to do so. So by decreasing the amount of shares outstanding, they will increase their earning per shares, albeit the company's net has declined.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So I will proceed with my part. I will briefly explain about how HealthSouth was formed. It was formed by a man named Richard Scratchy. Richard Scratchy has graduated in respiratory therapy in the University of Alabama. He was first hired as an entry-level position at Houston-based company. He worked his way up the ladder of the career, and by the age of 30, he already got the chance to run the company's pharmacy, physical rehab, and major department. Richard has the chance to build up his own company by receiving $1 million grab straight from Citicorp Venture Capital. The industry growth contributes to healthy gains for HealthSouth throughout the decade. The company experienced a massive growth in revenue. In fact, they were leading provider of medical rehabilitation and also was the United States' largest public healthcare company during that time. However, in 2003, HealthSouth Incorporation has been caught for fiddling their company's account. The company falsely inflated its profit margin to meet Wall Street expectation. The brain of the fraud was Richard Scratchy himself. He allegedly instructed accountants and senior officers to manipulate by modifying the earnings shortfall to prevent from the company reporting loss. HealthSouth committed accounting fraud during interesting period of economic growth and relaxed regulation, which made them keeping up with the fraud much easier. All the CFOs were involved in this fraud, and also they have many more employees of HealthSouth. The question is how they did that, how they managed to keep the fraud over the years. Actually, family meetings were created by senior accountants to discuss what false accounting entries could possibly be made. Surprisingly, the family members were involving the former auditors from Ernst & Young or EY public auditing company. They managed to fraud the company by making financial transactions between values of 500 to 5,000 pounds. They assumed the auditors would not able to check every transaction because this would be too time consuming, as in there are thousands of entries that the auditor must check, so they're assuming that they have literally no time to review it. But they were right though. This enabled the companies to make countless fraud transactions without being detected by auditors. There were several attempts from the employees, such as from an honest bookkeeper named Michael Vance, but all of his attempts went unnoticed. He finally resigned. After he resigned, he wrote an email to the auditors to have them check all of the company's accounts, but they have a better plan before. They have already fabricated all of the accounts entries and the auditors could not trace them and case is closed. Next attempt was from Diana Hens. She is a vice president of finance. She reported to her upper superior about the fraud she noticed. However, there was still lack of authorities. She worked hard and she asked for transfer from accounting department to an IT department. She is unstoppable to try and reveal the fraud of the company. Not long after, the rumors about a fraudulent scandal has finally started. Therefore, Weston Smith and Aaron Beam, which both of them is CFOs of the company, they blew the whistle themselves. They exposing the scandal through an interview. They did not try to lessen the culpability by sweep up the scandal in HealthSouth. They admitted Scratchy has abused his authority and several times threatened them to cook the book or else they will face bad consequences. Both of them were coward. They finally can voice out about the fraud as soon as they realize they will finally ended up in the prison for fraud they committed. After the interview, FBI agents raided the company offices as part of a criminal investigation. Soon after, many of the employees who participated in the fraud turned themselves in.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. I am Nur Amira binti Hamzah. So I'll tell you about the 3 components that affect individuals to commit fraud, or as we call it, fraud triangle, that consists pressure or incentive, opportunities, and rationalization. So for HealthSouth case, the accounting fraud happened due to the pressure of the employees, such as personal reason, which is the personal profit and the greed, and also to meet analyst expectation. So the founder of HealthSouth Corporation, Richard M. Scratchy, sold stock at the greater price and get profit $99 millions. And because of his greed also, the HealthSouth management is inflate the earnings. So by manipulate the earnings, Scratchy was able to secure the stock option for himself at the lowest trading day of HealthSouth and get the profit, the highest profit as much as possible. Other than that, his desire to match or exceed the expectation of Wall Street was so higher that HealthSouth decided to overstate earnings by billions of dollars. He also went far away to cover up the reality of HealthSouth business operation by force the employees to fix it or adjust the numbers to meet the financial moguls expected of HealthSouth if actual earnings were presented against the Wall Street predictions. Next, the opportunities that refer to circumstances of the existing fraud, such as weak internal controls, inadequate accounting policies, and poor tone at the top. So, in HealthSouth case, have all of these opportunities, and the internal controls, including adequate segregation of duties, proper authorization of transaction and balances, physical control over assets and records, independent checks on performance, and adequate documents and records. So because of all of these opportunities that allow the fraud to occur or exist in HealthSouth, Scratchy was the one that told employees to fix the numbers to reflect a better financial position, also had the authority to affirm and sign off the financial statement. Moreover, HealthSouth did not have proper checks and balances, and Scratchy could be the one that manipulate the company's financial figures by making a large amount on his own. As a result, HealthSouth accounting system did not sync with the corporate enterprise resources planning software. Other than that, the culture in HealthSouth management influenced the employees, such as the management is dominated by only a few individuals, and the management very interested in maintaining or increasing the stock price, that create an environment that is obsessed with earnings, and the management also has the power to influence. The internal audit function was also lack of training, since the board of directors or audit committee look for the material without effective oversight. The last component is rationalization. So example, common rationalization are they treat me wrong, upper management is doing as well, and there is no other solution. In HealthSouth case, when Scratchy gains millions while the stockholders lost billions, Scratchy claimed since he grew the business himself from the ground up, so he was entitled to gaining millions of dollars. He believed that he deserved the millions earnings, so there is no wrong that he gained more than the stockholders. Lastly, the company rationalized the action from a "we have to do this otherwise" perspective. They were afraid that the company might have financial risk or bankruptcy. Also, the personal asset at a risk, and the stockholder or investor might not invest in the stock. In addition, the employees could be afraid for the company's financial future that automatically affected their own financial future, and may also affect confronting Scratchy and overbearing CEO. So that's all from me for the pressure or incentive, opportunities, and rationalization.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Khairani binti Abdul Karim, and I will explain about the consequences, effect and penalty imposed for them. And every wrong we do will get punished, so others won't repeat our mistake, right? And that's what every mom in the world would tell their kid every time they do something that could give negative effect to themselves or give a bad reputation to the family. So we need to take conscience and remind ourselves about what the consequences that possibly happen between our option. So Richard Scratchy is the CEO and the founder of the HealthSouth company, and in that case, the company had committed a corporate fraud into the firm. It's not just him, but involved with many others, and the most highest position is of course their chief financial officer. And during that time, the 5 CFO has been investigated after the fraudulent had busted. And every 5 of them pleaded guilty and said they just follow the instruction that Mr. Richard Scratchy had ordered them to do. But guess what? He played victim and blamed back all the 5 CFOs.
There's no evidence of any of that, and many of what the people have said is not true. In good salaries, you expect them to do the right thing.
Including all 5 of Scratchy's chief financial officers. Scratchy says they did the dirty work behind his back.
Of course, he will deny everything after he knows what happened to him if found guilty, right? So it's easy to say that he's the mastermind behind all the tragedy because he's the one that will get more benefit than others, based on what Doug Jones, which is former US attorney, said in the HealthSouth CEO 60 Minutes interview.
He benefited more than anybody from this fraud. There's no question about it. 100 times fold.
So for the auditors, it's fair to think that the auditors did not perform their duties well, because the fraud is not misstatement between $2,000 or $5,000, but it managed to fraudulent the asset by over 800 million and overstated earnings by 2.7 billion. In return, E&Y has been replaced. For that time, their former auditor is Ernst & Young, E&Y. So in return, the E&Y has been replaced with PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, as their new independent auditors. So it involved with $1 billion of misstatement, but how come they didn't find it? It's no way, right? But okay, let's say they had no clue about the fraud because the mastermind and his 5 CFO are doing the fraud better than the auditors until they can find it, the misstatement. So, but there is evidence that which is the auditors, ignore all the signs that occurred during 1996 until 2002. first, the House Committee has released a memo 5 years before the fraud has busted about the potential fraud, but they ignore it, same what they did with the former HealthSouth bookkeeper during that time. So they try to give a sign, but there's no action from them. And next is the company. So during that time, HealthSouth company is the first national chain of orthopedic hospital and outpatient centers that become quickly one of the United States biggest rehabilitation services. So that the company need to pay $3 million ringgit to US accounting fraud case as fine, but that's what triggered the company to lay off their workers to cut costs, because in order for them to continue operating, they need to cut some costs, and they decide to lay off workers, then facing bankrupt. So beside that, the share price for the company is also dropped so drastic, which is as low as 35 cents per share. Because of that, many investors lose their confidence. And remember what I explained earlier about the E&Y auditor. They paid 109 million to the shareholders, right? Now the E&Y fired back the company by file a lawsuit against them. So the management, after the incident, of course, Richard Squashy got fired by the company corporation, and the other 5 CFOs are pleaded guilty after they're responsible for the misstatement of the company financial. So many employees also get laid off to cut costs, but it's unfair to think that they didn't involve at all with the fraud, but never that they know it will ruin their life. So who's got to spend some time in the prison and been charged? Of course, the 5 CFOs, but each of them had a different punishment according to their offense. First, we go to Mr. Richard Squashy, and he's the mastermind, which is the CEO of the company, and he has been charged with 36 offenses for the fraud, but he didn't get to spend a time in jail, because when the first trial in Birmingham, he gets away with it and was not found guilty for all the allegation. However, it surprised me, he get locked up in prison in 2006 for 7 years on the second trial, but not for the HealthSouth scandal, but about politics. He caught for bribery the governor of Alabama. So this is what it means. What Paulo Coelho said. He said a mistake repeated more than once is a decision. It means first mistake is a mistake, but second mistake is just their behavior. So it's unfair to think that he gets away with it while his management and 5 CFOs take responsibility for everything. And next is Weston Smith, is the one of the 5 former chief financial officer of the HealthSouth company, and the first one who break the secret about the fraud. And he spends 27 months in prison and have been ordered to pay $1.5 million in forfeited assets. And not just that, but after he released, he spent 1 year on probation. And next is Aaron Beam, is the co-founder of the HealthSouth company in 1984, and he has been served 3 months in prison for approving fraudulent activities when he still works at as the CFO of the HealthSouth. He also ordered to pay $10,000 as fine and include 1 year probation. For Michael Martin, he worked as the CFO of the HealthSouth company from October 1997 to February 2000. At first, he was only sentenced to probation and house arrest, but after the prosecutors won an appeal, he then sentenced to serve 7 days in prison after he linked to the company fraud and misstatement of financial status. And Williams Owens should have served into the prison for 8 years sentence according to the Justice Department. However, He was only served 5 years at the federal prison camp at Maxwell Air Force Base. After being released, he spent another 6 months in Birmingham halfway house and house arrest and got to spend 2 years on probation. And lastly, Ted McVeigh. I can find his image on the Google since he still new when he worked as the CFO of the HealthSouth, which is for only 4 months only. Because of that, he only been sentenced 6 months home detention and 5-year probation by the judge. Besides $10,000, he need to pay $10,000, and the amount he needs to pay as for the fine, and he has been ordered to forfeited to $50,000. He still get all that because he knows what was happened, but he chose to stay quiet. And the next organization that got affected is also the shareholders.
Doug Jones, a former U.S. attorney in Birmingham, has filed a class action suit against Scrushy on behalf of stockholders who lost billions, while Scrushy made hundreds of millions of dollars from the fraud.
So shareholder is among one of the affected organization in this fraud. They did not know all the things that happened to the company behind their back that could put the end to the firm. They only received an excellent audit report of the company that prepared by the E&Y. For that, every money they invest into the company is such a waste after they lost a huge amount of money. But many of the investors already lose confidence to the company, and it result in less trading in the stock market because it becomes riskier for them to invest. So it takes less than a year before all this blew up. The company's share price is higher, which is at $15.90 per share. And while a day after the incident, their share price dropped so drastic. It dropped down over 90%, which is at 85 cents per share. Many large investors stopped their trading into the company. And the least organization that affected is the patient. Since HealthSouth is the first United States largest rehabilitation services during that time, they got a lot of attention from patients that want to be cured by them. Suddenly, when the fraud case got busted, millions of families affected because their healthcare get disrupted after the company decide to lay off their workers in order to cut costs. And then the employees are decreased, but the patient are remain the same. So that trigger the chaos to the patient. And the existing workers cannot focus on one patient since the labor was reduced. As you can see, corporate fraud is really messed up so much because many organizations got involved and pay the price, but some of them did even earn benefit from that fraud, also get affected. Thank you. That's all from me.
Okay, last I'll talk about conclusion. There are many lessons that will be drawn from the story of HealthSouth. Most of the teaching are so obvious that one wonders how all of them are missed. Okay, firstly, the audit function is so important, which is a management team that's intent and unified in its plans to override the audit can easily do so. Then, collusion among several members of management makes the commission of crimes almost impossible to prevent and difficult to catch. Besides, small concessions cause greater compromise and unchecked, and it will cause serious ethical lapse and even crime. Okay, so as detailed above, nobody said spend and their career in prison. Several people from HealthSouth actually did end their career that way. It all started with small, seemingly insignificant and compromise. Okay, next, personal morality and ethics structure the collective morality and ethics of an organization. Okay, very often within the media, companies like HealthSouth are described as a monolithic entity that features a lifetime of its own. Okay, in reality, because the HealthSouth story illustrates the culture of the corporate is just the sum of its leadership and employees. Okay, so any of people described here could have refused to participate within the fraud, and it will have stopped or severely impaired the widespread operation to commit fraud, then cover it up. Okay, next, a legal or ethical compromise expose the likelihood of that original compromise getting used as blackmail to participate further. Okay, so for example, like Mr. Camper's story, which is Mr. Camper's story is an illustration of the continuing leverage of criminal enterprise once there has been participation. It is perhaps the foremost easiest pathway from a mistake to criminal involvement. And finally, cases from the late 1990s is that fraud are going to be caught and it will be punished. So, HealthSouth as a corporation is alive and well today. The life of these who committed the fraud has largely been destroyed. None of that comfort to the thousands of employees and investors of HealthSouth who lose significant portions of their life, saving thanks to the thief and deceit of relatively few people. Okay, that's all for our case, which is HealthSouth. Thank you.